from all, to all, with all, for all, through all. We thank the gods of creation. We thank the ancestors. We thank the forces of nature. And we thank the earth. We thank them for their direction, their protection, their guidance, for keeping us, showing us, allowing us to know and enjoy life to its fullest, now and later.
Black people who once loved with the slow march of time. Time was ours to hold in the soft, low-born chambers of our hearts. And once we, the Afro mommies and daddies of a sun world, would turn our strands of hair into antennas to tune in the juju madness and syncopated love rhythms of Africa. And we love with time, and we took the time to love, and with the right time we love, and we love time after time. Will we ever love again? Will we ever love again? Will we really ever love again? Or will we just sit and rot away with the brighter tomorrows in the skag field, rat-cluttered halls of our minds?
Black people, what y'all gonna do? Black people, what y'all gonna do?
Will the real black people please stand up?
Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us facing.
Jumbo Habari, and welcome once again to Our Story, the program that makes being black positive, relevant, desirable, and true to a lost nation in America. A program that speaks to the historical significance of the original people of the earth. Our Story Network takes pride in setting itself away from other programs that centers on entertainment or rhetorical mumbo-jumbo that misdirects your attention onto other things that causes you to exhaust your resources and renders you brain dead. It is Our Story who talks about commitment to you and your people. It is Our Story that champions the reestablishment of the black genius that once ruled the world. It is Our Story that focuses you in on the rewards of black advocacy, black activism, black involvement, and black power. It is Our Story that encourages survival of the black race and solicits your involvement to that end. Black folks must remember race first is a call of the day, and we as a people must. I say must take the pledge if we, the people of the original race, expect to survive. As I take the many lessons I have received over the years and reflect upon them by sharing these lessons with my brothers and sisters, I realize the power that we as a people possess for the most part has gone unnoticed. The masses of black folks who have been rendered lost and disenfranchised from the meaning and mission our creators intended for us to embrace is all but depleted. It is because of the mission and meaning of the life of our ancestors that I realize how blessed as black people we really are. What fascinates me are the many gifts I have been granted, which allows me to distribute the information onward to you. As always, that message begins and ends with the importance of blackness. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Greetings, friends, comrades, family, the inquisitive onlookers, and our beloved viewers. Welcome, welcome, and welcome to our Story Network. We thank you for being with us this evening, and we trust you will take something of value away with you after the program. This is the aim and goal of our Story Network, the network that leads the pack in modern-day communications and ancient and modern education. I say ancient and modern education because of the many errors we have found in the translations and interpretations of the ancient records. The modern revelations by new black scholars have opened the window of discovery that has allowed the truth and knowledge originally disseminated by the black masters of education to flourish once again. This is one of the stumbling blocks that has kept black people from rebuilding their greatness and recapturing their birthright. Good evening, brothers and sisters. This evening, I would like to pose to you the question, how often are we victims of language? And really, it is not the fault of the intentional repressed population who are kept uninformed and ignorant at the pleasure of the rich and famous. Language in rich countries also are indicative of class and status. Potato versus potato, tomato versus tomato, all indications of what the so-called highbrows, as they refer to themselves, call society. The highbrows say, America is beautiful, but America is not so beautiful when you are poor, disadvantaged, or black. As we recall, America was built on and continues to harbor racism, white supremacy. If for those of you who challenge my assessment of America disagree with me, then explain, how can a great country like America still embrace the actions and behaviors of racism, white supremacy? A political ideology so horrid that a majority of whites wants to be distanced from this ideology, which leads me into the fact that most whites who claim to be dissatisfied with the political ideology sit idly by while those who profess this ideology gain momentum because 2/3 of the white population raises no resistance to what many whites call disgusting. Talk is cheap, and action speaks volumes. Here lies the problem with America. Most talk and very little action. This is also the problem with black America. Taking their cues from the white America, black America is talking loud and saying nothing, which leads me into tonight's conversation. Throughout white America, revolutionary figures are honored and celebrated as heroes and sheroes. Yet black revolutionaries are scorned and mislabeled. This is expected from the white America, but black America sits by and does nothing. Many of our black leaders and leading institutions say nothing about the black revolutionaries who have died for the advancement of our people. We hear little about Booker T. Washington, Martin Luther King Jr., Frederick Douglass, and Malcolm X, just to name a few. But the revolutionaries who have been tucked away in prisons and jails, or who have died behind bars as the slave trade continues in America, are forgotten and never celebrated as heroes and sheroes. Why, we ask? Because we, the black people of America, allow the white people of America to dictate and control our heroes and sheroes can and will be. Whether black people are willing to acknowledge it or not, this is slavery, the control of a people in their destiny. Tonight, we are looking into the revolutionary heroes and sheroes of Black America. According to Stephen Ledman of Black American Web, America has postured itself, and I quote, as the leader of the free world, and that they, meaning Americans, don't have any human rights violations, and they certainly don't have any political prisoners, end of quote. Unfortunately, most of us in the black community are not paying attention to the disproportionate number of blacks and brown people filling up American jails. As the military clouds the airwaves with international propaganda, so do the domestic forces prejudice the homeland airwaves with notions of rebellion being acts of criminal behavior. This is why blacks pay very little attention to the plight of the political prisoners in America. Once again, blacks are living in slavery, in slave conditions, because blacks have no independent capabilities of governing, owning, or controlling mass communications in America. In fact, when blacks talk about deplorable conditions for blacks in America, the good Negroes step and fetch it up to the podium to pronounce how free blacks really are. People, this counters the argument I have with us tonight. Brother Bilal Sunni Ali, one of Black America's freedom fighters, who escaped the pitfalls of American society when America was trying to imprison him for acts he proved in court he had nothing to do with. So we can have as much of the hour as possible. I am proud once again to bring to our story viewers and viewing audience, Brother Bilal Sunni Ali. Brother Ali, welcome to our story, and share with our viewers the truth about our hidden heroes and sheroes.
Thank you, Brother West. Thank you, Brother West, and welcome to the New Orleans listening audience and those who are listening in other parts who are able to get through the various technology, are able to get this program. Let me say I seek refuge in Allah against misleading and being misled, and I ask Allah to guide my heart and to guide my tongue in terms of what being asked to speak about today. And to put it in a nutshell, America criminalizes, just like they have, it's become an expression, driving while black. To describe how just because you're black, when you're driving, you're gonna get pulled over for something. You're likely to get pulled over for something, and you're likely to go to jail. You're likely to get shot. This is the everyday reality. We used to say this is the everyday reality of the leadership of our people to be criminalized. But now it's anybody. Anybody, of course, our leaders can be accused of and criminalized for driving while black. As fact, that's exactly what happened in the case of Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly known as H. Rap Brown. He was pulled over, and for the reason that they say he had a dealer's license plate. He had just bought a car. He had a dealer's license plate. That's what you drive off of the parking lot with. But they stopped him, they searched him, they questioned him They questioned him as if everything he was doing wrong. He had a badge in his pocket, a badge that was issued to him from the mayor of Whitehall, Alabama, as an auxiliary policeman, because he was involved in a lot of the youth events and sporting events, and they awarded him this special auxiliary police, not a part of the police force, but a part of the special force that helps keep the peace and helps orientate the youth toward working to each other through sports. But they charged him with impersonating a police officer. Yeah, it's like he didn't even show the badge. He didn't say, hold on, I'm an auxiliary policeman, you know. They saw the badge, they saw something shiny as they were searching his wallet, and they asked him about it. He gave them the explanation. They didn't accept that explanation. And, you know, to make just making a long story short, because this is a very short time I've had the experience of being here, planning to talk about several things and not having the opportunity. But one of the things I did want to talk about, since we were talking about our people being criminalized and our political prisoner status being denied, is something that's continuously going on. And we have Imam Jamil, as you know, had been targeted. He had been arrested, falsely arrested. We've gone over many times the accusations, the description being not a description of Imam Jamil, the person, and the incident in which he was convicted of shooting a sheriff deputy. There was the only living eyewitness to the incident says that he shot the person that shot him. He shot him twice in the head and once in the heart. And twice in the chest and once through the head. Imam Jamil hadn't been shot. So, but they still arrested him anyway. They still tried him. And while he was being tried, the judge issued a gag order so that he wouldn't be able to, the press wouldn't have access to him, and he wouldn't have access to the press. What has continued, even though that trial was over some 16 years ago or more, the Bureau of Prisons are pretending like that, or that as if that judge had said to them, do not let him speak, because it's within their interest not to let him speak as well. So they don't even need a gag order, but they use the fact that the judge gave them, they're saying the judge ordered that he not speak. But we know that the Bureau of Prison don't necessarily listen to the judges, because the judge, in another case in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, the judge ordered that Mumia Abu Jamal be given certain medicines for his hepatitis B. And they went back and forth disobeying the judge's order, and even tried to get the judge's order vacated. So this pretense that they are imposing this gag order because the judge says so is just another, what we call a white lie, and and we don't mean that a white lie is less than any other lie. A white lie is some of the worst lies that has ever been told to us have been white lies. But in regard to this gag order, we have a petition that's out. We have a petition and a letter writing campaign. People can sign the petition. They can go to the website kundnani.org. That's spelled KUNDNANI.org/Jamil Alameen. You can go to that website and you can sign the petition to end the gag order, instructing the Bureau of Prisons that we, the people, we the people are instructing them to remove the gag order, this gag order which they've themselves have imposed. We're instructing them to remove that gag order, allow Imam Jamil, formerly known as H. Rap Brown, to have access to the media, and let the media have access to him. I know myself and several other people who work for the media can't even get a chance to see him because the authorities say that we might leak a story. But I know the media, it doesn't pertain to me. The gag order doesn't pertain to me. That's why I'm here talking about Imam Jamil H. Rap Brown and telling you what they're doing to him. And I want to say, in one of the things I want to express that things are going better for him medically because they've, as Malcolm said, they've pulled the knife out a little bit. Remember, Malcolm had made an analogy. If you stab me in the back, and then you pull out a knife, and you pull the knife out a few inches, you want to say that that's progress. So what has happened is that they kept him illegally in isolation for over 16 years, no contact with any human beings. Now that he's had contact for going on a year, he's been in population, he's able to associate with the other prisoners, laugh, talk, give hugs, and have natural dialogue, natural intercourse with other human beings. And so, of course, his demeanor is much more brighter. The pressure of isolation is no longer with him, and so he feels better. He looks better, and we say that everybody should be out of isolation. The United Nations Commission on Human Rights describes that condition as torture. But what Imam Jamil will talk about when he's able to have more access to the press is something that it's something that is very important to African people here, in that we're in the 5th year of the International Decade for People of African Descent. It was declared so by the United Nations Human Rights Commission. The decade for people of African descent, where the United Nations as a body is encouraging African people who have been the victims of racism and segregation all over the world to do things. And one of the things that we're doing at the behest of Imam Jamil, because in fact his lawyer Musa Danfodio is the commissioner for the for the African descendants group here in the Western Hemisphere. That's his lawyer, and his lawyer has organized a conference which we've reported on before, called the First Conference on Confederation and Human Rights Remedies, and that conference took place in September of last year of 2017. And what the adherents to this conference have continue to do, not begun to, but have to continue to do, is encourage all of the various groups which refer themselves as nations and which organize toward African people in the Western Hemisphere being a nation. Those groups include the United Negro Improvement Association, African Communities League, that was originated and headed by the Honorable Marcus Garvey. It also includes the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, and it includes many of the Moors, the Moorish American groups, and many of the indigenous groups such as Choctaw, Washita, Seminoles, and etc. And the Nation of Islam, the Lost Found Nation of Islam. It also includes the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and a number of organs which organize our people toward nationhood. And this conference that talked about confederation and human rights remedies, to say, just to briefly boil it down to what it's actually saying, is that there's a form of nationhood that is recognized by the General Assembly of the United Nations, and it's called confederation. And we're suggesting that that's what we do. We don't see that the UNIA is a nation unto itself, or that the Republic of New Africa is a nation. We are all nations, but we can have standing to bring our issues before the UN and before other international forums if we confederate, and that's what began to happen at that conference. Many organizations, many of the churches, the indigenous groups that were there signed into confederation. And so we're moving ahead. We're moving ahead toward that. One of the things that, in moving ahead with it, that we're talking about is another form of internationalizing our struggle, which is being headed by Jalil Muntaqin. He put forward a proposal, which we've mentioned before, to have the United Nations Commission on Human Rights launch an official investigation into the human rights abuses that have been placed on our prisoners through the program, the counterinsurgency program. And I like to call it by that name rather than call it COINTELPRO, because when you give something a nickname, people don't take it as serious. Just like when you give somebody a nickname, is because you don't take them, you take them for fun. And these acts of war should not be taken for fun. Just like the transatlantic slave trade, it doesn't mention anything about war on war against Mali, war against Ghana, war against the Washita Empire, war against the Incas. It tells about transatlantic slave trade. They could have been trading anything across the Atlantic. But so when we talk about this program, the counterinsurgency program as it's defined, I don't like to call it COINTELPRO, because counterintelligence gives you the idea that it's just talking about what words are being used, or investigating, collecting information. But counterinsurgency is a war term, and it especially speaks to war. So that's what this counterinsurgency program has committed: human rights violations. And you can go to the Jericho movement, which we've talked about before, is a movement that organizes people in various locales across the nation to support political prisoners and prisoners of war. New York Jericho, and that I believe it may be coming up on the screen soon, but the website is www.jerichonY. That's JERICHONY.org. www.jerichonY.org is the website that you can go to get more information about Jalil Muntaqin's proposal to have the U.S. bring these charges, investigate these charges. We ourselves intend to bring the charges forward. We've had the UN rapporteurs here some 35 years ago, and we know they reported, and you can get a copy of the report that they have. If you go to Jericho, New York, use that as the website to get into, lead you to the rest of the information.
Brother Bilal, let me break in for just a second, because we have lost an awful lot of momentum as a people in this country. Back in the day, my day, there was a term that was echoed through every city and state in this country. In fact, brothers and sisters used to greet each other with the term nation time.
Mm-hmm.
Today, nation time has taken the place of the Model T, and it has been put in a museum and forgotten. Now, when we look at the course of history, we see after the Civil War, there was a movement of black people. In the early 20s, there was a movement of black people. In the 50s and 60s, there was a movement of people. All of these movements are responsible for the fruits, advances, and special considerations that we as a people enjoy today. Now, if we're just relying on the past, then at some point the fuel is going to run out and we are going to become stalled. Now, I'm listening to your reports about the United Nations, what has been done and what is being done there. Why are we as a people not taking advantage of the work that has been done and is currently being done, moving our agenda to the UN? Because that would give us a world platform.
Well, the reason why we're not moving at a faster rate, but we are moving because this is, and when we had this conference, some of the first people to sign, the first group of people to sign this conference were college seniors at Tougaloo University. These young black men and women were the first to move and sign. Even some of us old heads who had been involved in this nation building, we were slow in getting up there to sign. But these young people were eager. They sat through the conference, they heard it for the first time, and they were eager. And this is it. When a lot of people hear the issues for the first time, they're enthralled with the idea that we can have nationhood, that we can have standing to bring some of the atrocities that the U.S. is responsible for before an international body to be tried. But what has consistently happened is that we're in a state of war. So people, like, for instance, people who went through, people like our grandparents, our great-grandparents, who were at the convention in 1922 when that the UNIA held, that Marcus Garvey presided over. When that was over, there were attacks against Marcus Garvey. There were attacks against other people in the movement. There was legal attacks. When the Black Power Conference took place in 1968 and the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa was formed, there was not only legal attacks, there was a military attack. At the second anniversary of the founding of the Provisional Government, the Detroit police and the FBI came in and shot up the place. So people believe in nationhood, and they know it's nation time, but they know if you say it's nation time, and if you're peacefully in a meeting drawing up the provisions of what will be a provisional government that will lead our people from this status of colonialism into a form of independence and into a form of liberation, that you're quite subject to be shot at, just for doing that. So that's what slows up our people. It's not our people's decision, well, that we don't want to do that. But because that happens, so you have less and less people talking about it, you have a next generation where that haven't heard about it because people have stopped to talk about it because of the state of war that we're in. And that's what this proposal is to do, to examine the actual state of war that we're in and get the UN rapporteurs to report specifically on this war action of the United States and how it has affected us, how it has affected our movement and affected our people. And so that's that's exactly what we're looking at in terms of exposing. Now that you bring that up, and it's a part of the introduction to the show, again on how the continuous erosion of our movement toward liberation. There has been a collective has developed known as the Rebuild Collective, and they have a journal out. It's just coming out in a few days, and their website is www.rebuildcollective. I'll spell it out. www.rebuildcollective.org. Rebuild Collective is a group of brothers and sisters who are interested in strategically and fundamentally rebuilding the new African liberation struggle, going from what a basic unit of organization should be based on. And because we've gotten away from that, we actually have documents that were produced by the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa that have been tampered with. I can't find a copy of the government administration manual that has within it what a basic unit should consist of. And that basic unit was always talked about, it's spelled out how a basic unit of the provisional government of the RNA should be organized. That there should be the administrative positions of a chair, a secretary, and a treasurer, and there should be people responsible for various areas of work that our people suffer under, such as is outlined in the Black Panther Party 10-point program, in housing, in health care, in education, and of course police brutality, and in jurisprudence. Those are just some of the things that, and also that there would be always someone within that unit that would be responsible for keeping up the information and retelling the story of the RNA 11. Our brothers and sisters who defended the government house when it was attacked in Jackson, Mississippi. This has been removed from the government administration. So I've been traveling around pointing out to people that this hasn't been removed. If we're not using this as a model of how we organize, then we won't have anything. We'll just have people calling themselves New Africans, call themselves provisional government, but the basic organizational tool won't be there, and it won't be in the book because the book has been tampered with. We need to write a book. We need to write the book over, and those of us who were organizers then need to come together and remember. I remember it, and so some of us remember, and so we're putting that forward. So in this first edition, there's an article that they have, and it's from me. It's from the reflections panel at the recent Nation Day conference in Detroit last March. And the presentation that I made is in that book, and there's also an article about the reviving of the creed. It's a criticism of the creed to delete certain things out of the creed that many people feel were not appropriate. For instance, there's a part of the creed that says, "I'll be patient and uplifting with the deaf, dumb, and blind." And deaf, dumb, and blind, that comes from the Quran, and it refers to hypocrites. And so we're not saying that our people are hypocrites who know about New African nationalism. We're saying they don't know, and it's our responsibility as leadership to make them know. Yeah. But we shouldn't be calling them, we shouldn't use that. And how that got in there, I guess somebody thought that was a nice phrase to use, but it's totally inappropriate, and it makes people wonder how are they being accused of something. If you're trying to recruit somebody into something, you can't accuse them of being hypocritical to it, because they can't claim to believe in it and then don't believe in it. They don't know about it, and it's our job to teach them about it. So that and some other phrases have been critiqued and recommended that those things be stricken from the creed to make the creed a much more homogeneous thing for us to use in reaching our people. There's also an article concerning women in revolution, black women in the black revolution. And there's an article which I thought was very good, which I just read last night, and it's called "Smashing the Neo-Confederacy." Like now, we know there's a movement around the country and in the territory especially to remove statues, remove symbols of power. And so there's an article that's talking about combining combining the people's momentum to remove symbols of power, to remove actual vestiges of power, actual institutions and pockets of political organization that actually uphold the Confederacy. As we move to make it popular to remove the symbols, we need to be moving to make it popular to remove the actual Confederacy, because it still exists. I mean, they tell us that the South lost the war. That's the prevailing narrative. But if you look at it, what was the results? The results of the Civil War, and it's the South got everything they were fighting for. Yeah. South got, so that's another thing. So that's all part of this newspaper that's being printed, and hopefully will continue to be printed when it should be out this weekend. And when it comes to New Orleans, one of the distribution centers will be the community bookstore. And I'll make sure that you get a copy so that you can talk about it on the air. On the air.
That's when we look. Well, first of all, we have a large segment of black folks that have not accepted the fact that black people are in a war in America. Mm-hmm. Truth of the matter is, we've been at war in America for 500-600 years.
Right.
That's the truth.
Right.
But how can those that want to deny the war justify that we have just about every black organization that was a liberating force has been rendered null and void? Mm-hmm. But the Ku Klux Klan, the Nazi Party, mm-hmm. the Mafia are still functioning and functioning well.
Right.
So how do you wipe out one segment and leave another segment? You'd wipe out the black segment and leave the white segment and say that you don't have a racist country or a racist power structure. Mm-hmm. And we don't address it, we don't meet about it, and we don't come up with any strategies to change it.
Okay, well, the Rebuild Collective is just about doing that, and that'll be an opportunity. That'll be an opportunity for the people, for the people to get involved in redeveloping our movement for liberation and our movement for independence. It has to be we don't expect that we're going to start with thousands of people reading Rebuild and flooding the offices wanting to jump, but we feel that there'll be maybe 2 or 3 people here and 2 or 3 people there, and slowly it'll build the momentum. It'll come back together, right. And that's what we're hoping for. So that's what was started. And they asked me to submit they heard me speak at Nation Day, and they asked me would I submit that article and as part of the first development, the first publication of the first issue. And I agreed to, and I'm glad that I agreed to, and I'm glad that it's there as a part of the discussion with those other aspects of rebuilding that not only need to be discussed, they need to be dealt with. And so I'm very glad that's a start. I would feel very bad if when you posed that question, I had nothing to say, and all I could say was, yeah, that's right,
Well, brother, as active as you are around the world, as much as you travel, I could never imagine you being without a response or without a word to put in as far as what something is concerned, because you have been a bridge for not only New Orleans and not only for blacks here in America, but blacks throughout the world. Yeah. I mean, you travel from here, this country, to Belize, which is your home, and you have been a voice and a force for us to get information and to stay on top of a lot of the things that are going on. And I, for one, am very thankful that you come on our story and share the information that you have, because it is information that is necessary and needed. Yeah,
I, for one, am very glad that you have this avenue, because everywhere I travel, there's not an outlet for the information. Sometimes I'm just at somebody's house sharing with them, or just at a meeting with some interested people, sharing with them. But in New Orleans, fortunately, there are a few television shows and a few radio talk shows where I can actually come on and bring forth a discussion that generates a discussion that brings people together at other times besides those media venues, bring those people together in the community to continue that discussion. And that's what we're looking forward to. There's one issue that I wanted to definitely bring out, and that's the issue of many people have heard or haven't heard the name or may not remember the name Sundiata Acoli. Sundiata Acoli in 1973 was one of the people that was with Assata Shakur when she was shot and imprisoned, and her comrade Zaid Malik Shakur was assassinated. Sundiata Acoli was also shot, but he made it out into the woods, and he made it out into the woods. He was later captured. He's now 81. Yes, and that was 45 years ago that he was captured. He's been locked up for 45 years. Not totally, because there's been at least 3 attempts where his feet hit the ground, where he said as his duty as a revolutionary to always try to escape and to escape whenever possible. And there have been those attempts when he was free. Since the time he was captured, he has hit the ground. He has hit the ground out of Marion Prison, the famous prison that they say nobody can escape from. But our brother, our comrade Sundiata Acoli did escape from Marion Prison. He was captured soon after. He escaped from several prisons in the state of Jersey. He has been in federal custody for most of this 45 years. However, for the last year, he has been back in the state custody of the state of New Jersey. And we want people to write to him, because the last time he went to the parole board, they told him, come back in 15 years.
Wow. And we're running out of time. We have the fastest hour in
so there's
television, so
an
give
address.
the information.
You can get more information if you go to www.sundiataacoli, that's sundiataacoli.org, www.sundiataacoli, and you can write him. Please write to him at Sundiata Acoli. His number is 440-810, the letter A. Again, that's 440-810, the letter A. New Jersey State Prison, Post Office Box 861, Trenton, New Jersey, 08625. I don't know if they had a chance to flash that on the screen again. I'll repeat it one more time. And that information, your host, Brother Wesley Johnson, will have that information. If people want to call into the show at another time and want the information that we presented tonight.
I also, because we're just about out of time, I want to tell them about the book.
Oh, and we've dedicated this book, which we've talked about before, Look for Me in the Whirlwind. We've dedicated this book to Brother Sundiata Acoli, who was one of the principals in that trial, the New York Panther 21. We've dedicated to him, and also we talked about earlier, Imam Jamil has written the foreword to the book, and Mumia Abu Jamal has written the anteword to the book, and we hardly have time but I want to mention that Mumia Abu Jamal has a day in court, and that information will be available through Brother W.C. Johnson. It will be available if you call the show to get the information, Mumia Abu Jamal's next day in court. And so that's but as a last minute, just wanted to encourage people, as I've been encouraged through traveling. We know that El Hajj Malik Shabazz used to say that travel broadens one's scope.
Yep.
And it certainly has broadened my scope and opened me up, whereas like a lot of times I see that in struggles, in people's struggles for liberation, there's ebbs and flows. There's times when it goes down, and then maybe 50 or 60 years ago.
Now.
Right.
We've got to go. My brother, you have to come back and see us again real soon. I want to thank the people who are tuning in and following the information that we disseminate. It's information you just cannot get anywhere, everywhere in the world, that's for sure. But I want to mention the fact that I believe Brother Johnny will be here next week during the show. So for those of you that enjoy his presentations, look for him next week. Until then, brothers and sisters, we want you to stay strong. We want you to stay black. But by all means, most importantly, stay involved in the struggle, in the movement. Till we meet again, brothers and sisters, Yehoro Sasa Ungawa.
Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought.
Before Dr. Dre, there was Dr. James, welding cords around a copper frame. We sing songs not for the accolades, to lift voices like a helicopter blade. High in the listening skies, my eyes glisten and tears drop down like rain. Not from the pain, from the joy of how far we came. My brainstorms are designed to celebrate our reign. Yeah, when you put it in perspective, the collective, monuments erected, continents affected, presidents elected, ancestors making moves with the music we've been blessed with. We use it to keep communities connected. Through harmonies, a harmony is collected. Reaping the fruits our foremothers invested. Lift every voice till freedom has manifested. Come on, yeah, lift every voice till freedom has manifested. Come on, listen, lift every voice till freedom has manifested. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
Sing a song,
yeah,
full of the faith that the dark past has taught us.
Come on.
Sing a song, full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun,
Facing the rising sun. Come on.
of our new day begun.
It's a new day.
Let us march on
Yeah.
till victory is
Yeah, until victory is won. Come
won. Till victory is
This is
won.
victory music. Come on, I hope you feel it.